Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this planet. My name is Adamantium, and welcome to this edition of AAU TZM Podcasts. I hope everyone out there who's listening to this, either on their MP3 players or iPods or computers or whichever, I hope you're all feeling well. And if you're feeling a little down or in need of a little hug, I'm sending a hug to you right now. There you go. Anyway, just as the usual announcements, for those of you listening to this on YouTube right now, my podcast also exists on talkshoe.com. Down there in the video description, you'll find a direct link to the call series. There you can listen to and download the full 60-minute podcasts for free in MP3 format. So just for those of you who wanted to go that route, I find normally people find it easier to just download the MP3s because they're only 27.4 megabytes each. But yeah, there's that. Now, considering I didn't really have time to address this on the prior podcast, I'll address it here. ZDay 2012 in London. That was back in March. It was a truly wonderful and insightful day. My thanks go out to not only those of you who made the day possible, like Ben McLeish, Tom Williams, all the other speakers, and many others who worked behind the scenes, as it were, but also to everyone who attended. It was an awesome turnout, and I was thoroughly pleased with how the day went. It was fantastic, guys. Thank you. The videos of all the talks are slowly coming in now, as I think London is probably the last event to upload the videos. We first had Ben McLeish's talk on punishment and the prison system, and we've also had Miles Dyer's talk about empathic communication and the mediums utilised for that. And hopefully very soon we will have all the other wonderful talks uploaded, including my own talk on values. But they're coming since, I've been informed that they're currently being edited. So just got to be patient for them, guys. Just one more update. For those of you who are musically inclined, Peter Joseph has just created a new archive website and YouTube channel that showcases all of his video material, including a very eargasmic, yes, I said eargasmic, selection of his personal musical works dating back to his younger days. This channel will also feature the complete soundtrack to the Zeitgeist film series eventually, so keep an eye out for that, guys. So that's that out of the way. I will waste no more time and get straight to the point of this podcast, which I alluded to at the end of my last one, which will be a Q&A podcast. So, waste no more time. Here we go. Question 1. A few of my friends have expressed interest in TZM and its advocations, especially in regard to utilizing the most advanced technology, etc. However, there is one staple of their current lifestyle which they feel they would be too difficult to live without. That is the use of oil, petroleum, unsustainable fuel, powered motor vehicles for purely recreational purposes. In rather less convoluted terms, driving, modifying, and racing cars purely for fun and excitement. I'm referring to those who consider their motor vehicles as more than just modes of transport. They are sources of pleasure, socializing, learning. They become conduits of one's feeling and emotion and creativity. And as far as I can see in an RBE, personal cars, especially petrol-powered ones, would be considered wasteful and unsustainable. Wow, actually, a very good question, actually. I know exactly the kind of people you're referring to. I mean, I used to know a fair number of them. Well, I can completely understand the notion of a personal automobile or motorcycle or other motor vehicle as a means for personal enjoyment. I also recognize, as you rightfully said, that they are predominantly run on unsustainable fuel sources. In addition, it's very difficult to tell what part that plays in the practice of how deeply it's set. One person I've spoken to has admitted that it's the smells of the oil and everything else, like the sounds of a roaring engine. For quite a few people, it's particularly the sound of a V8 engine. In this context, it's all the sensory inputs which can solidify the experience, and it just wouldn't be the same without them, right? Well, to which I asked them how they would feel about it when all the oil is gone and nothing left to produce those exact smells, sounds and feelings. And understandably, they weren't able to give me an answer. Well, they did answer with the belligerent, well, the oil's not going to run out for ages yet. Well, one of the things I've actually realized over the last year or so is that oil will not simply run out, as it were, like a biscuit tin eventually being exhausted of its contents. What will actually happen, as per the simple laws of supply and demand, is that the more scarce oil becomes, the more expensive it will become. Eventually, it will be too expensive for even the rich to afford. So, in a sense, I suppose it could be said that oil won't run out as quickly as we think. But that is different from the availability of oil, which is rapidly drying up, no pun intended. Maybe one question we need to ask ourselves is how sustainable are our values, and how sustainable are the methods by which we acquire our happiness? One question that I pose to any petrolhead, as they like to be called, is how important is the petroleum-powered internal combustion engine to your recreational use of a motor vehicle? Will your passion for motor vehicles die along with the last drop of oil that you can afford? Or are you able to still enjoy the experience with a few changes made? Anyone who is up on technological advances when it comes to automotive transport are well aware of the cornucopia of developments and innovations that have come out in the last 20 years or so. Electric cars are becoming more and more powerful, battery power is becoming more durable and stable, not to mention the myriad of different propulsion means. I mean, I've even seen a video of a guy who was able to power his pickup truck using water. And I've seen an innovation called the pod car as well. I mean, it's a small vehicle about 2/3 the size of a smart car that's powered on compressed air. So what compromises are petrol heads able to make? One thing that we should never forget is that the first automobile wasn't propelled by the internal combustion engine. It was electric. Yeah, back in the 1920s, the first car was an electric car. Maybe we had things right from the get-go on that front. But with that consideration already in your mind, let's consider how such a practice could be accommodated for. Is it resource efficient to provide for these needs? Well, if there's a large enough demand for this recreational activity, then it will be a reality. I suppose the debatable topic would be whether petrolheads should be allowed to pursue their passion while still polluting the atmosphere with the agents that are produced from said practice, which, by the way, are essential for the current vehicles used to function. Can a compromise be reached? Personally, I think there should be. When it comes to people modifying their own vehicles, fill your boots, guys. No one's going to stop you. Just know that the oil isn't just needed to grease your engine and put in the tank. It's also needed to paint your car, to be refined for all the plastic components, and there is also 8 barrels of oil in each of your tyres. Where to draw the line, I dare say, could be a sticky topic. When it comes to the social aspect of this lifestyle, we would be foolish to overlook the inherent stratification and ego pursuit of such a practice. While I can understand it to a certain extent, I must admit that on the whole the boy racer thing is a rather base and superficial thing. It seems to be all about how much money you have, and hence how much ability you have to soup up your vehicle. This is then used almost like an ambulatory peacock's tail to attract females and command respect amongst your peers. You see, that works in our current system, but in a system where everyone has free access to the ability to modify your car and kit it out with all the plush and wonderful gizmos, then logic falls in on itself. Scarcity is required. The earning of such splendor, hence sex appeal and respect, is no longer there. Even when it comes down to actually racing these cars, which by the way is also a primitive gaming mentality of open competition, what would be the point? To understand this better, imagine that every boy racer had an infinite amount of cash to spend on mods. You all have the same ability to do what you want with your car. Would the result of that be people going to ridiculous lengths to make their car stand out? So you see, the social aspect of motorsport can only legitimately exist and have a purpose and basis within a monetary system where money and resources are scarce and oil seems to be abundant. And I'm sorry to say that we don't live in that kind of world. So what do we do then? What do the petrol heads do with their time? Well, I suppose that's up to each of them to decide for themselves. Suffice it to say, the constraints of nature apply to them just as much as they apply to us. Anyway, question 2. What do you say to people who say that soldiers are heroes? Ooh, interesting question. And quite a complicated one as well. Now, just for your own edification, if any of you listening happen to hold dear any strong sense of patriotism involving the military, I would suggest that you go and make yourself a cup of tea or something, or just, skip this question entirely. Okay. Are the highly offendable out of the room? Okay, then I'll begin. Put simply, I don't agree that soldiers are heroes. Soldiers are just like any public servant, and their job should be protect, not kill. Okay, they should be keepers of the peace, not soldiers. They go in as good, moral, and altruistic human beings, probably. However, they go into the military out of either economic necessity or a false sense of patriotism and national pride, which, by the way, are both fallacies based upon learned restrictive compassion and structured hostility. Patriotism is nothing more than racism with a flag to justify it. But nothing justifies the wanton slaughter of other human beings for either resources or religion, which, by the way, are the two biggest causes for war. In a sense, men and women go into the military indoctrinated, and they become paid serial killers. The difference between a serial killer and a soldier is that a serial killer does it for their own pleasure, and a soldier thinks they're doing it for their country or freedom. Well, I'm sorry, but our freedoms are not acquired or maintained by our soldiers or any soldiers murdering people in foreign lands. Our freedoms are inherent in us all, and they are maintained by those of us who have the courage to stand up and exercise them. I'll give you